Bruce Wayne may appear to be a wealthy playboy, but beneath this facade, his true identity is that of the Batman, waging an endless war against crime. Join the Caped Crusader in Batman The Audio Adventures, the first scripted audio original featuring Batman and his villainous rogues gallery in a world premiere story of life and death in Gotham City, debuting exclusively on HBO Max. This rollicking adventure, told across 10 episodes, is written and directed by Emmy winner Dennis McNicholas, includes devilishly delightful original music by Doug Bossy, and performances by Rosario Dawson, John Leguizamo, Chris Parnell, Melissa Villaseñor, Seth Meyers, Jason Sudeikis, Brooke Shields, Fred Armisen, and many, many more. Go to hbomax.com/Batman Audio Adventures for more and stream Batman, The Audio Adventures only on HBO Max. Welcome to another episode of Countdown to Infinity, of Marvel's Avengers podcast. And if you are watching this on Patreon, then you're watching it because we are recording video. But if you're listening to this on the public feed, you cannot see us. And maybe you are the real winners. Who knows?
No, I think this paywall, it's worth it because I am wearing close to nothing at the moment, and I think it's what you get here.
Oh boy!
That's true. All of us have incredible lighting setups. I mean, just it looks spectacular.
Yeah,
Delphin looks like he's inside of a strip club bathroom.
I am.
The light just changed color. I mean, guys, you are missing some truly amazing stuff.
It reminds me of some La La Land aesthetic too.
Well,
I get that too.
You're both right. I am on break from the strip club where I strip to the music from La La Land, and it's a very particular audience in here. It's a lot of...
It'd be me if I knew where that was. That sounds great.
Yeah, and then I explain jazz to you while you throw dollar bills at me. Anyways, this is not our La La Land stripping podcast. We are starting a brand new 3-episode series mini season in preparation for Spider-Man No Way Home, which releases this week. It's me and Lex. We're talking each of the actors that get to play the Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland. And this is episode 1, so that means we're talking Tobey Maguire. I thought of every Spider-Man actor except for him right now. We're talking Tobey Maguire. Really, I think the formative Spider-Man for us, because we are men of a certain age.
Yep.
But are you excited, Lex? Are you excited to go through the Rolodex of the 3 men who got to play Spider-Man?
The gigantic list of actors. I'm super excited. Spider-Man's a character that's very close to my heart, and I think going through this list, it's not only nostalgic, but we're analyzing, what elements we liked about each of them. And ultimately, I know it's still like speculation and stuff, but ultimately, if we do get to see the 3 Spider-Man on the same film, I think it's just going to, what we're going to be talking about through this series, it's just going to throw back to that moment and kind of build it up, if anything.
I mean, and can you imagine if they don't appear in the movie? Then all of these episodes will immediately be deleted.
Yes, because you guys will not remember this happened at all.
We would have wasted some time.
I know.
But also, from what we're hearing in the movie, it is good to have kind of just a base level knowledge of the Spider-Man, but also the villains are introduced in all of their movies. Because, I mean, we see them in the trailers. We know that at least 100 of them are in No Way Home.
Yes, so. the guy that charges rent, he's confirmed to be back. And
wow, the guy that charges rent.
30 minutes of this episode is dedicated to his story alone. What was he doing before? When did he become a property owner?
Yes, and what are the difficulties of this Biden economy and how it has? I'm just kidding. Well, we're episode 1. We're talking about Tobey Maguire, and really in conjunction with Sam Raimi and his take on the films. And we've got a guest who knows directors because he has a podcast about directors, Auteurs, the other kinds. And it's Brent from Director Show. Brent, welcome to our very special inaugural 3-episode series. You're a third of our guests.
Oh man, what a great honor it is. Honestly, yeah, thanks for having me on this flagship episode, the first in a trilogy of podcasts that, by what you said before we started, the schedule these are dropping, boy, these are dropping hot. These are dropping hot off the presses right up until this movie comes out. But thanks for having me on, especially talking what I'll say is my favorite Spider-Man.
Wow.
Actually, I'm not even.
Lex, we haven't even talked about that yet.
Yeah, I'm not even. Well, I'll say it. I mean, it is my favorite one.
Well, I mean, this is kind of these, for us at least, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films, Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man 3, they didn't have, back in the day, I'm talking to you millennials, they didn't have little subtitles.
Y'all kids behind Spider-Man. Don't know.
Y'all kids, you don't know what it's like to just look at a number. But these are special because they're kind of came out in that formative year. They're marketed towards us. We were preteens/teens around the same time. Lex, you're the youngest.
Yeah.
You were a toddler, I believe.
Yes.
But these movies were kind of geared to us, and that may be why we feel so affectionate to them. But Lex, how did you feel if you could put yourself back in Pampers?
Yeah.
Or I assume you look like a pull-ups baby. But what put yourself back in those pull-ups, and how are you feeling? Were your parents excited about the Spider-Man movies, or was it just you?
No,
screaming?
They believed movies would alter my mind. So I actually just saw the Sam Raimi films yesterday for the first time.
Wow.
And no, just kidding. Well, quick question before I go on. Typically, I understand size doesn't matter, but I am noticing that the wavelengths on my microphone, they're really tiny.
No, you're fine.
Is that fine?
Yes.
Okay.
It's fine.
Okay, sorry for that.
It'll be bad. Look, Brent and I have big ones. But it's okay.
Okay,
Lex, it's fine.
No shame. I'm not a. Is it called wavelength? No, not wavelength. What are these called?
I think that's what they're called.
Okay, I'm not a wavelength.
Sure,
shower. I'm a grower, so it's okay.
You're a grower,
and it's cold outside.
Wait,
the weather.
But that's Lex. That's bad for us. If your wavelength, if your audio slowly gets louder and louder until you're peaking, I don't want that.
I didn't say when.
What is happening?
Yeah, I didn't say when you grow. I mean, I might not grow today.
That's true.
It could take
and you know what?
years,
if these,
according to
for
my
the
doctor.
adults out there, if these wavelengths are analogous to some other parts of us, then mine will be over.
Yours
very
are just
here.
crazy. That's like some big wavelength energy. Like
yours are all peaking.
You're
like from what I'm seeing here.
Peaking. I don't understand.
Well, I'm at the 7-minute mark, so I'm about to be asleep.
Okay.
But Lex.
Yes, sorry.
But
back to topic. I'm sorry, guys. I didn't want that to hinder the episode in any way.
Well, we are recording remotely, so for all you weirdos out there, yes, it's 2021.
But no, my parents were surprisingly really excited for this movie. What I do recall is, I mean, I was fairly young, so just for context, in 2002, I was 7.
Uh-oh, get ready to feel old.
I was 7, so as a kid, I understood how movies worked. I understood what I liked and what I didn't. But I remember very specifically, compared to today, the many TV spots that I've seen for No Way Home now, the trailers, the speculation talks, the breakdowns of the trailers, that was nothing back then, right? So I think just walking freshly into a movie, and I knew who Spider-Man was based on the animated series and stuff, and so to see it in live action, though we had X-Men and Blade beforehand, if I'm not mistaken.
Your parents let you watch Blade? Wow.
I think so. Yeah, they didn't care. I think I watched Blade, but I think if it might have been. No, I don't think it was censored. Anyways, the I guess what I was trying to say is that for some reason, I know there was an animated version of X-Men, but to get a live action of X-Men, to me, it just it felt cool, but it wasn't like a big wow moment. But seeing Spider-Man turn into live action, for me, I remember as a kid, that was a wow moment. I was excited. I was like, I can't believe like we're getting, a real live action take on this. So yeah, and my parents, I think their excitement for the film in itself, it just kind of, it kind of like, gave me even more hype behind what a movie. And at that point, like you didn't know if this was going to lead to a sequel and stuff like that, right? Like at this point, we know Tom Holland has another one working on, right? So like, once again, I think looking back at these movies, there's also a sense of purity in terms of how there's not a lot of noise behind it. It's just you're there to have a good time and watch a movie. It just happens. And that's it. Exactly. So it's great to look back and think of the feeling.
Wow. Yeah, super. I mean, these Raimi films are definitely history making, the first of their kind in whatever scope they end up being, and really, really special stuff. Brent, I know that you were probably a Spidey Whitey fan.
A Spidey Whitey fan. You bet I was.
I don't know what that means.
I was yeah, I was definitely. So I was born in 90, so I was about 11, I think, when this movie was coming out.
Already a man compared to Lex.
Yeah. Already a man.
I believe you're in your second job, mid-management.
Yeah, exactly. In the middle of my high school, junior year, I jumped some grades. I didn't. That's a lie. But no, these movies were huge for me. Like, and Lex really hit upon a lot of the reasons why. Like a thing that I didn't even kind of think about beforehand, but was also really vital for like my context seeing these movies was the animated series. Yep. Like anytime that show was on and I could catch it, like I would always watch it. So I wasn't a big comics kid. Like I wasn't at all. So I barely read comics growing up, but
like Tobey Maguire, he doesn't read and he says he'll never read comic books.
I mean, yeah, well, I like him now. I'm not.
Oh.
Toby and I differ in that department. I'm not a.
You also don't have a gambling thing.
He's like my movie. Yeah. My movie is the only story you should follow of Spider-Man.
Yeah, Tobey Maguire. He thought Spider-Man was a original character that he was creating.
He was like, damn, like Sony executives are brilliant. Like, how do they come up with this shit?
How do they come up with this? How do they cook this stuff up? So I think when I saw the first movie, I was going into it with that love of the animated series, the 90s one. And it just totally blew me away. And are we just only kind of talking about the first one or like this in general?
No, we'll talk about all of them. Well, let's talk about general. Well, I'll introduce the first movie here in a bit. But before that, I'll just say, these movies are really great. I agree with both of you. I feel like this. I feel like it was hard. It's harder now to have one thing be the conversation. Like this movie was going to school. There was no talk of other things, no other movies, no other TV shows. It was just Spider-Man. And now it does feel like you could go into a conversation, and I don't know how many times I've heard, "Oh, have you seen this thing?" And I'm like, "No, I haven't." And they then proceed to tell me why I'm dumb. But I feel like at the time, especially even by the third Spider-Man, it was still like a vacuum. And, these movies, highest grossing superhero movies of the time, some of them the highest grossing movies up until until James Cameron came in with his blue, tall alien people. But super formative. And it makes sense that Tobey Maguire is a favorite. And actually, in a recent poll, he is still the favorite Spider-Man actor of all time, even after all of Tom Holland's stuff. But of course, we'll talk about that a little later. But yeah, Amazing Spider-Man, Whoa. Spider-Man comes out in 2002. It introduces us to Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker after a long search for a director. They've been trying to make Spider-Man movies since the 80s. M. Night Shyamalan, Roger Corman, M. Night Shyamalan twist. I said him again. David Fincher was gonna.
He was considered twice.
Tim Burton, James Cameron has a famous Spider, and they landed on Sam Raimi because he was just such a huge fan and had a really big devotion to the character. And they cast Tobey Maguire because of Cider House Rules and his dramatic turn, and Sony thinking that, wow, maybe we can have like a pretty serious Spider-Man, which was not what exactly what happened. And then, of course, we have Willem Dafoe, James Franco, a lot of really A-list actors. But Lex, what did you think about the first Spider-Man movie? When you went in, obviously you were 7, so you were just happy to be there, happy to get a booster seat, because remember those things?
Yeah.
You had your little like kids tray of like your like popcorn,
I
candy.
I didn't use that at 7, but actually, you guys just reminded me of those seats.
Oh, booster seats?
Yeah,
I still love those all the time.
I still use one.
I'd like to remember when's the last time that I used that, but I mean, I remember also like intermissions and stuff. Like people don't know what that's about, but
and then just like a blank screen before the trailers start instead of someone like doing a commercial for something.
Hey,
no Maria Menounos.
I was gonna say and no trivias. The trivias are fun. I enjoy that part.
Well, now this pod is just old people being upset about stuff.
Back in my day,
There's Maria Menounos.
kids and their trivias.
But Lex, what do you remember? What do you think? What did you think about the first movie? Even just revisiting it now.
Yeah. So I think from the get go, like I was 7, but the way that the movie opens, like you initially start feeling emotion when listening to the score that Danny Elfman. Danny is his first name, right? Danny Elfman.
Mm-hmm. I call him Dan.
Yeah, Dan the Man Elfman. No, but you admit the
he
movie
probably hates that.
The movie,
hey, Dan the Man Elfman.
The movie opens. You start hearing this score, which is composed in such a way to instill emotion, but then you have a narration, like to an extent that formula. It's a very early 2000s thing, but the narration immediately took me back to the animated series where you would consistently get monologue from Peter Parker. But then you start seeing, an approachable guy, dorky, he's being made fun of. So, as a kid, you immediately start making connections of perhaps, hey, I've dealt with this, or, some kids are mean in school or whatever. I'm just kind of like, once again, setting the tone as far as like, as a kid, you just connect the dots. And I think adults may have had even more of a sample to start connecting those things and making this character.
It's like the real strength of Spider-Man and Peter Parker, and why he's popular to begin with is because he's a regular, quote unquote, person.
And then just to summarize the rest, like, the explanation behind his powers, the movie just does so much in such little time that, if I was to describe someone the movie, right, it's like, oh, he gets his powers, he does this, he begins, he did the whole wrestling thing. Like, if you break it down and explain each of those scenes to someone, it's typically what movies now require 2 movies to do, right? Like setting it up and getting the execution right. This movie just did it in such a short amount of time, leading up to a pretty great climax with an antagonist that even Willem Dafoe as a kid, like, he was menacing. He was, I think he portrayed an excellent figure of, what a kid or even just an adult should fear to an extent. So I think the movie checked like all the boxes from what you would want to see in an intro film.
Yeah. I mean, I think, it's a very good origin story for a Spider-Man, but also just a superhero or a movie with someone has superhuman powers. But Brent, what do you think of the first Spider-Man movie? I know you just revisited all of them recently, right? You just rewatched all the Tobey Maguires.
Yeah, that is kind of part of the reason why I really wanted to be on this one, because I just by kind of happenstance building up to this movie, I rewatched all 3 of them. And I really love the first movie. I think, and we'll talk about it the second, but the second movie, but I just think that a lot of the love for the first movie gets lost in kind of how great the second one is. But a lot of the stuff that happens in the second one is like stuff that was kind of being built in the original movie. And I just love how like character centric it is. Really, I'll say all 3 of these movies, how like character focused they are. on the relationships and their dynamics. I just think Sam Raimi is a perfect fit. Like, this movie was made in kind of that perfect, like, I don't know, like, I think there's a range of time periods where, like, if you were a good director, making a movie between like 1990 and like 2003 or 4, maybe 5 too, but like a 15-year gap where if you were a good director, like, there was this beautiful hybrid of practical and CG kind of fusion that you could kind of figure out. Yeah. And I think that Sam Raimi really, really knew how to do that. And I think he started to figure that out in this one. But then by the time the second one hit, and the third to an extent, like, he really knew how to portray Spider-Man in like a blockbuster movie. And I don't think anybody's done web slinging better than Raimi in like this movie. It's, the moment when he is gonna, use his webs for the first time and all that stuff. It's just it's such good, like, hero building kind of character development stuff that is so good. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, I feel like that's what makes this movie so unique and such a timepiece, is the fact that you haven't seen anything like this before. I mean, they literally invented camera rigs that they use at NFL games to make you feel like you're swinging through New York. Yeah. And that mixed with Danny Elfman, it's a great, it reminds me of what Sam Raimi does really well, which is take really, really big swings. If you've seen any Evil Dead movies, even his first movie ever, Drag Me to Hell, they are not at all subtle, and their characters are Bruce Campbell, like, so, you have a movie like this where these are big operatic sweeps. Willem Dafoe becoming, his best friend's dad is this evil millionaire, and he can't tell his best friend, or he can't tell Mary Jane that he loves her, but he's also saving a bunch of people around town. Like, a lot of that stuff works really well. And I think that, the first one was such a really good origin. And there's a lot of stuff too that makes it just a perfect time. New York is a huge part of this movie, and there was a lot of reshoots and re-editing and remarketing that had to happen because 9/11 happened. Yeah, and they had to pull all of the reference to the Twin Towers, all of the posters built for that. And I specifically remember scenes where he's like going through New York with giant American flags behind him and a bunch of NYPD, cheering him on. And there was like an oddly placed, but maybe perfect for the time, patriotism to this movie. And I can imagine after like having a really bad year, going to the movie theaters and feeling really good after watching Spider-Man, and somehow feeling like, oh, well, here's a good person doing really good things and helping people. So I don't know. I feel like it was it's so different because you're right. X-Men and Blade came out, and those movies were really brooding and dark, character focused, but they weren't necessarily things you were going to take your kids to, or you weren't going to feel good, quote unquote, leaving.
Unless you're my parents.
That's true, yeah. But your parents are also daywalkers, so they're...
No, in no fairness, we rented it, so I don't think I saw Blade in the theater. I think it was just we rented the movie.
I just want you to know, Lex, that there's no statute of limitations on getting arrested for showing underage kids rated R movies. So
okay, that's good.
I don't want them...
They arrest for that. It's a heavy-duty crime.
You'll get arrested for that. Yep.
Yeah, dude, just speaking to your, the patriotism is interesting because it's like, you got to kind of put yourself in the mind of like, this is 2002. It's a very New York movie. Yeah. And literally the final shot of the movie is like him landing on an American flag. And you just got to imagine like everybody in the theater was like, fuck yeah, man. Like Spider-Man, New York, like we persevere. And that's, even if that's like cool patriotism to me.
Yeah. And even if you think back to the moment where, the climax of the movie where Peter's saving Mary Jane from the Green Goblin. And, in order to overcome the challenge that he was making by choosing between, the group of kids and Mary Jane and stuff like that, he was trying to manage those two things. And in a very climatic or in a very like intense moment, like the people of New York start helping him, and they actually distract the goblin for him to do what he needed to do. And I think that's like, unlike the movies that we spoke about, like the superhero movies that we had been exposed to live action wise, at least beforehand, they didn't really go into that extent to showcase the kind of impact that a character like Spider-Man can have on the people that he's around. And I think even just that moment of people rallying up, as far as like, you have to take on all of us, and together, like, you can't really do that. I think that whether it was in direct response to the events of 9/11 or not, I think, like you said, it must have felt good, especially if you're someone from New York seeing that. But as someone who perhaps, like on my end, as being a kid, and perhaps you're not constantly thinking of those things and the horrible things that happened on that day, you even then, like, even if you're not thinking about that, seeing an expression of that unity, it carries with you. And like I said, we hadn't had a superhero that did that, at least in live action. I mean, you can think of, like, you know, the Richard Donner Superman movies and things like that, but I think even then it wasn't in this modern era, like the level of unity that you needed to see.
Yeah, you're right. And I think that's it's what's really fun about the Sam Raimi movies. I think, Brent, you brought up all the relationships and dynamics, but so many relationships with humans, almost none apart from the villain, with anyone who, like, he's having problems with his boss and his girlfriend and his aunt, and that's really where most of the tension in the movie is. Yeah, it's really, really good. Well, 2 years after, he signed on for multiple movies and became really, really wealthy, Tobey Maguire. But a lot of folks, and Brent, you alluded to this, I keep saying Amazing Spider-Man. Spider-Man 2 is kind of where a lot of people still see the peak of superhero movies. And I think a lot of that is due to Doc Ock and the portrayal by Alfred Molina. It's a textured and layered and kind of a tragedy kind of movie. And it has that classic, darker tone that most follow-up sequels make, like since Star Wars. But Brent, what'd you think about Spider-Man 2 from 2004? Let's do the math. You're now still not in the double digits yet as a boy.
I was. Wait, are you talking me or Lex?
I don't remember.
You said that, but then
you
shit. Joke sounded
he was
like
in
you
double
were talking
digits
to
in the
Lex.
first time.
I was.
So I was like, you go ahead, Brent.
Okay. Yeah, Spider-Man 2 is a masterpiece, honestly. Like, I rewatched these movies recently, have always had a fond recollection of Spider-Man 2. Even just to go back a little bit, like, Spider-Man 2 was in that era of, and this is what I almost brought up earlier when we were talking about this, these movies overall, but like, this was in the era where, like, Revenge of the Sith was coming out. I was getting into, like, movie blogs and, like, movie websites and rumor mills and all this stuff. And I was following, like, every little trickle, every little possible thing, every possible leak. And there was, like, all this stuff about, like, the Chameleon and Sandman was, like, all that stuff was rumored for this one. And then by the time it happened, like, the trailer dropping was a huge deal. And I still remember, like, I haven't even seen it in a decade plus, but that trailer where the car flies over Peter's head in the diner or whatever, and it's so goddamn good. But no, this movie, I think, is basically a perfect superhero movie. Doc Ock is great. Like, Alfred Molina is incredible. Just the fact that he's so incredibly, like, human and, like, kind to Peter, but it very much is like a who's the equivalent, like, monster, like the Wolfman, I guess, maybe is like the equivalent, like, universal monster. Yeah, this person who gets, like, taken over by this thing, but
at the end he gets that spark of humanity back.
Not according to No Way Home.
Yeah,
just kidding.
Oh, never mind. Yeah,
we'll see. Yeah,
I hope
curious.
they address it. I hope they just don't, like, want to undo. Apparently, they did consult with Sam Raimi, so I'm hoping there's a good tie-in. I
mean, yeah, Raimi's in the family now, so I hope that I am nervous about some things that they're doing, but we'll see. But the other thing I just wanted to say about 2, the reason I think it works so well is the amount of conflict that it has, and not even like, it does have that kind of like action, you know, like characters are in danger conflict, but it's just like the fucking stakes that they get from having Peter like lose his job, have Aunt May. Aunt May? Why does that sound so weird when I say it? But Aunt May can't open a savings account. She can't get a toaster. It's just like all of these little moments that just completely build to this like, holy shit, this guy is like a human being.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, he's a superhero and he's incredible, but it's like, God, his life is pathetic.
He's having a hard time keeping the secrets, and by the end of it, it gets to a point where all of his secrets are just out there.
Yeah, but it's, I think it's just a perfect superhero movie. It's so good.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
Lex, how do you feel about Spider-Man 2?
Yeah, I think Brent hit a lot of the things like that I feel towards the movie. I consider it still to this day probably the best superhero movie sequel. Where like the second one, and I say it greatly outperforms.
But Lex, have you seen Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer?
Yes, I've seen it. It was a close second.
They keep flopping.
But it outdid what the first one did without taking credit away from the first movie, because as we said, it's such a great origin movie. But I think that the depth that this one adds, the characters, and even just continuing that those many story threads, like we're talking about, the relationship he has with Aunt May, Mary Jane, balancing life, work life, school life, I think it's just great. Like, it humanized him even further. He was introduced as a human in the first movie that just so happens to now be capable of doing these things. It doesn't free you from the responsibilities and from the burdens that everyday humans have. And I love that. What may have alienated him as a character because he can do super extraordinary things, like, it just took it back, and it doesn't matter. Like, you're seeing him deal with the things that everyday people do. And even as a kid, like, I was just seeing, like, you know, I wasn't thinking of like, oh, I guess, like, what does my college life look like, 15 years from now or whatever. But as a kid, I'm seeing an adult who you would think he would have stuff figured out, or you would think that things go his way a lot more because of the kind of things that the kind of person he is and the kind of things that he does for other people. And that's just not, it's more complex than that. So I love that element of it. I think also, though, a bold strategy for them to show you him just wanting to, put this part of his life away for a moment so that he can, I mean, not for a moment, he wanted it to be permanent. He wanted to be a regular person. He didn't want to carry that burden. And I think that's a great conflict to have. And though the body of sample, that of the superhero genre wasn't as vast as it is right now, I don't think even movies today have been able to replicate that decision making and replicate, that the weight of these heroes and what they carry. Yeah. Normally the movies today, they go into this fact of like, they just deal with it, or like, it turns out great for them, or they show like a minute of conflict and then like, oh, but yeah, he remembers who he is. This movie took its time in presenting that idea and making you feel the repercussions of that. And I think I heard someone say that, in the first movie, he became Spider-Man out of that sense of, responsibility instilled by Uncle Ben. But in this movie, he left that behind. And then he re-engaged into being Spider-Man, but this time not out of responsibility to someone else, but it's because something he wanted to do. So even just coming back to that and elevating and evolving the character, once again, I think even though that movie's been out for so long, and it's a truly great blueprint. I don't think a lot of people or a lot of the movies now in execution been able to even replicate part of the success. However, I feel like it's inspired a lot of things in many ways. I'm a big Superman fan, as some people may know, and I recall specifically some of my favorite episodes in the Smallville series dedicated to Superman, where the episodes where he lost his powers, and that happened multiple times throughout the seasons, and it kind of threw back to the moment that the Sam Raimi franchise accomplished with the second movie, and in terms of the burden and the things that come with that, right? But yeah, it's a great movie. The action is amazing. I recently rewatched it as well, like Brent. The whole trilogy. I think I stopped midway the third one because I didn't have enough time. But I have to say the visual effects have aged quite well, in my opinion. When you look at other movies from the time, not everything gets to feel, in a way, still fresh. And I think that has to do with the style of the Sam Raimi Spider-Man, as far as like his fighting style, the swinging, like we talked about, the shots that were used. I think all of those things combined, not just the visual effects, make it so that it still ages very well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think Brent talked about a little bit that marriage between practical and CGI. Obviously, Dr. Octopus, Doc Ock, as I call him to save time, has puppets on his back that then is married to some CGI stuff. But yeah, this movie elevates every single element of the first Spider-Man film. The relationships are more complex. The betrayals are much deeper. I alluded it to earlier, but Harry Osborn finds out who Parker is Spider-Man. Mary Jane finds out. Everybody knows. Doc Ock, figures it out. It's kind of of that level of thing. The visual effects are really good. It's the first of the Spider-Man movies to win an Oscar for that, for visual effects. I think that there's a lot of this movie that is just about a perfectly balanced movie, especially when it comes to the necessities of these big budget action sequences. There's the perfect amount of those things that are tied up with story, perfect amount of, his home life. And then when it starts to feel misbalanced, when we're seeing a lot more Doc Ock, when we're seeing a lot more Spider-Man, his personal life is dealing with that too, because there's imbalance there. And, we saw a lot of Mary Jane in the beginning. Now we're seeing less of her. And subconsciously, as the audience member, you're like, oh man, yeah, maybe he's not around more. But then you're like, oh yeah, watch the movie. He's dealing with other stuff. So it does feel like he's absent. And I think that's kind of what's really clever about it. And I think that Doc Ock and Alfred Molina, who is apparently a really big part of No Way Home, at least from the trailers, I think it's one of the most empathetic villains, quote unquote, most complex, and I think it really works well, especially in this version. But this is a very successful film, ends on a semi cliffhanger because Harry Osborn punches a window and finds Daddy's suit in the very kind of, I don't know. Oh, and then the other thing I thought that was really cool, and it's totally a Sam Raimi thing, he has these kind of conversations with his dead uncle in the ether or in his mind. I thought that's really clever and really fun.
It was very emotional, very good moment to see Uncle Ben return for that, especially once again a pivotal moment where he makes that choice, like I said. And that's why I think, thematically, perhaps they didn't even show him beyond that, because once again, this time to become Spider-Man, it wasn't even about his uncle anymore. And I think thematically that works as well. One thing I was going to say real quick, because of what you were talking about, Manny, like, I think it's just this movie has a lot of moments of greatness and a lot of memorable stuff. Of course, the train scene, it's amazing.
Is this the one where the little boy, he makes him promise not to tell who he is, or is that the next one? No,
it's this one. It's in the train scene. Once again, a moment of unity with the people of New York, and the idea of what Spider-Man does to these people and the inspiration. They actually stood in front of Doc Ock, knowing what he can do and how villainous he is. to protect him, and they, see who he is behind the mask, and they specifically say, this is not coming out of us. Like we're not going to tell the world. We know what that means, and that perfect.
The opposite of it's the opposite of see something, say something.
Oh, yeah, I thought you were going to say it's the opposite of Tom Holland, where like people know who he is, and they're like, "You're the devil." But what I was going to say is like that great moment. I think it's really touching, and on many levels, it just talks about who Spider-Man is, but I recall the specific line of someone from that train sequence just saying like, he's not much older than my kid. And like that carries so much. And, we forget that Spider-Man truly is just a kid from Queens. And just before we move on to the next movie, I got to say, like, another one of those super memorable, well-aged things about this film in particular is that speech that Aunt May gives to Peter in a moment where he needs it about, there's a hero in all of us and what a hero does. I've actually heard that speech being given on, like, certain montages of the character, and it's just, like, it's timeless in my opinion. So it once again, in many ways, this movie represents what I don't want to put it in a bubble and say like what a Spider-Man movie should be, because I do like differences throughout the franchises and the different takes. Like I like a fresh take, and you don't always have to follow the blueprint to a T, but the emotion that it gives to the audience, I think those are the things that you should go after replicating, because it's good things and it's in character.
Yeah, maybe one of the best Spider-Man movies because it's the most complex of all the Spider-Man movies. Well, Brent, it's time to talk about your favorite one, and that is 2007 Spider-Man 3. Everyone's back, baby. They're all back.
Go.
This. I mean, in terms of the theater going climate at the time, people are wanting to make these kinds of movies. MCU's already gearing up and ready to go. Yeah. It's on the way. People are seeing this. The X-Men movies are coming out. This is like there's an Indiana Jones movie coming out. Like this Spider-Man. It's kind of odd to say, but I don't know if there's like Spider-Man, especially after Spider-Man 2, is the template, and it is it's what everyone wants from a big budget blockbuster movie. So, everyone's expecting an incredible masterpiece from Spider-Man 3. Brent, what did you think about Spider-Man 3? Are you a Venom stan, a Sandman stan? What else?
Christopher.
I'm Green Goblin stan.
I'm a bit of a stand man.
Stan Lee cameo, man.
Sandman stand. Listen, this movie has some undeniable problems. All right. We got to come out and say it. Got to be honest here. There's been a lot said about Raimi's conflicts with Sony. Their kind of forced admission of Venom, and how much you kind of feel that in the movie, that wasn't something that he necessarily wanted. This movie came out when I worked at the Palladium Theater, when I worked there.
Nice.
And we were showing showings, we were showing it 24 hours a day around the clock. So I had like some shift where I worked like 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. to like 6 a.m. or something crazy. But yeah, no, I saw this movie and was pretty confused when I first saw it. I was probably 17 or 16, I guess, at this time.
Barely legal.
I don't think that's how that math works, but
whoops.
Yeah. But I saw it and I was confused, and I remember seeing it again because I mean, at this point I'm a just dyed in the wool, huge Spider-Man Raimi movie fan. This is like one of my most anticipated movies ever. Seeing it again, I think liking it a little more, but still being like, oh, okay. And kind of that just kind of being my big takeaway. I will say I have not seen this movie since then. I think my second viewing.
Oh, wow.
And then I watched it. I I think 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it has aged kind of well for me, honestly. I think this movie is all right. I don't hate it. I don't think it's like a huge blasphemous entry in this trilogy. I think it's undeniably very messy and has things that I would just lift right out of the movie, personally, like Venom and you know, maybe Gwen Stacy as well, because I think there's enough drama with Harry and Mary Jane and Peter that you don't need that really. But it also was a thing of like, at this point when I watched it, we are 13 years deep in the MCU, right? There are shows coming out every 2 months. There are movies coming out every 2 to 3 months.
We subscribe to the Countdown to Infinity podcast.
Yeah, please subscribe. Here I am, like tanking the podcast I'm on.
Now,
Stop listening.
They're 44 minutes in. I'm sure they're subscribed or just maybe passed out.
Yeah. No, but and it's funny. I'm not even like using this to like talk bad about the MCU, but we kind of generally know how these movies are going to unfold, right?
Brent's taking off his mask. It's Martin Scorsese.
Oh, it's me.
He snuck into the pod.
Marty's here. Marty's in the building. No, but I just mean that when I rewatched 3, I was like, this is so weird and so different. And in a way, it felt kind of refreshing to get some of those weird, like Sam Raimi is having fun in a lot of specific ways in 3. You know, with like, I don't know, the Venom suit and all of that stuff. That stuff kind of worked for me this time when I saw it, because I was just like, this is so wild for a superhero movie, and I appreciate the swings that he's taking, even if I don't like Venom as like a character, and I don't like Topher Grace in this movie. Holy shit, get him out of there. But you know,
there's a lot of stuff.
Okay.
I just remembered now, and this is partially because I also got semi-permanent amnesia, that Harry does have amnesia at the beginning of the film, and that is just to prolong the revelations of the first or the second film. Does that make sense? Because you think after that, you're like, oh, he's just going to kill. But you're like, no, we can't do it yet.
That's not great. That's very like, okay, we're spinning our wheels here. Like,
but Lex, what'd you think about it? I know that you're a big fan of more. Would you have liked to seen more villains? And it's funny because I feel like that's the base level response I remember at the time, being like, there's too much plot, it's so heavy, there's more villains. Yeah. And here we are about to see a movie that is about to feature a dozen characters.
Exactly. That's why, time has made the movie age very differently.
But Lex, what do you think about Spider-Man 3?
I think this would the biggest flaw in the movie is that it didn't have 10 villains, because I think that if
a new one every minute, baby.
You want to get them out of the way, like just make it so that any other Spider-Man reboots, if they make a villain, whichever villain they select, you've already done it. Yeah. I think that should have been the goal.
I mean, you're not wrong. Like, having a shared amount of spotlight on the backstory and sometimes the origination of each villain is difficult. But like, if someone just shows up and says, I'm, chairman, and I love chairs and I can make chairs into something, I'm cool with that.
That sounds good. I love that.
Well, you don't need to see my custody battle. Or what is Sandman?
It's his daughter's sick. And
but he's from prison.
Yeah, well, he was on the run.
Oh,
did he escape prison? No, he didn't escape prison. Oh no, he did. He did escape. Yeah, because he's initially crawling out. Yeah. So, but he was. I like the. Well, let me start off with what I think about the movie. I
know we keep interrupting you, Lex.
I think I am.
I do.
It's gone. This movie and my my thoughts on it has gone on a wave, because I was still fairly young when watching the movie.
Let's do the math, Lex. You've given us your
12.
age the
I was
last
12.
two.
Whoa, yeah,
barely legal.
I was 12. God, I was 12. Super big Spider-Man guy, like Spider-Man, like fan, especially after the first two movies. Seeing this for the first time, I didn't know. I think at that age, you still don't know what a bad movie is. Especially in this genre, if that makes sense. Like, I don't think you start defining those things until later in life, because still at this time, it's early on where you're not. I wasn't going to YouTube and watching reviews. I wasn't going and reading reviews. So you don't have any outside opinions, filter in, right? So
I don't even think Rotten Tomatoes was a thing.
It's possible that it wasn't. But now I do watch a lot of reviews there's certain people that I value their opinions, and I treat them as such, like opinions. However, sometimes like looking at a movie, I think of like, oh yeah, that reminds me of what X person said. And so some people don't like that, right? But I guess what I'm trying to say is, as a kid, you still have that level of like, I'm going to watch and think of the movie of what I experience and nothing else. Like at that point, you're not even experiencing or like seeing the newspaper to see what people thought of it.
Yeah. You're just thinking Venom looks cool.
Well, so initially,
I'm not even joking. That's what I thought, I think probably.
It might have been what I thought too. I mean, I've always liked like the symbiote like texture and all that stuff. Like I thought that was cool.
Meanwhile, Brent that year went to go see No Country for Old Men and There Will Be Blood.
Yeah,
which both came out at like around the time, and you're like,
I did. I must admit.
Yeah, well,
that was your bar.
Yeah,
that year.
I guess so. Yeah, so as a kid, I'm just like, that was really cool. So I liked it as a kid. I think I enjoyed it quite nicely. Now, of course, like thinking back, like I think as a kid, if you asked me which one did you think was cooler, I probably would have said the second one. And I think at the same time, like you asked me like, oh, like which toys did you enjoy more? Well, maybe Spider-Man 3, because there was Venom, there was Sandman, there's all these things. I remember I specifically owned a toy of James Franco's New Goblin. I remember that. So it's like, right, like there's different takes to take. So when I first saw the movie, I remember my mom took me and my brother. We had a blast. We liked it. I think the final battle was epic. I think it was one of the most epic that, at least at the time, like even when you think back at the Doc Ock and Spider-Man fight, I don't think it was to the scale of this movie. When Sandman becomes this giant creature, I remember watching a trailer where they played a bit of the news where it was saying this might be the death of Spider-Man. And like, that's like, you're watching a trailer and you're a kid and it's like, whoa, no way. Like they're not going to do that. And then you see the betrayal with Harry and all that stuff. I think once again, from that perspective, this movie delivered. And that's how I felt as a kid. Yeah, it was big. Yeah. It was epic. And once again, as you said, Iron Man hasn't come out yet. The Avengers movie hasn't come out. So this was the biggest that we had probably in the genre.
Yeah.
When I rewatch it now as a teen, as someone who's seen more movies and things like that, you start feeling that crowd.
You started watching films. Cinema.
Yes.
On film only.
Scorsese
films. Yes, at this point, I had seen everything that Adam Sandler had put out, and so you have a bar to hit. I love Adam Sandler, by the way. That's just a joke.
Yeah, Hubie Halloween classic. I'm not even joking. It's good.
No, I liked it a lot. But once again, as I was a little bit older, I started feeling the crowdiness of the movie, and I started noticing some of those gaps. I realized one of the first things I identified watching the movie, like later on in life, was that I personally, and once again, this changes, but I personally didn't care for the Sandman stuff. I actually thought like the whole movie should have been Venom, and that's it. I liked that conflict a little bit more. I like the Eddie Brock's a douche like thing, and like as a kid, I remember thinking that the emo Spider-Man was cool, but then I see it later in life and I was like, it's a little corny, but it's okay. But once again, I wanted it to be more about Venom. And so now the movie has grown on me where that crowdiness is still there of all these things that they were trying to do, but I respect what they were trying to do with each of those things separately. It's just the execution of putting that stuff together. Now I feel a little bit different. I feel like, you know what? I now really see, watching it now, is like I really see what they were trying to go with Sandman. I know that's what Sam Raimi wanted to do. He simply just wanted to do Sandman. That's why there was a lot of heart behind his character, and seeing like the element of forgiveness that arc that Peter Parker had to go through, calling back to the loss that he suffered in the very first movie. So now seeing it as an adult, I was like, yes, that's probably what the movie should have focused, and still develop these dynamics and these conflicts between these other characters. And so it's kind of been like a up and down to the point where I am now at where I respect what they were trying to do. I still can't say it's a great film, especially when compared to the predecessors. But I think for me, the biggest regret with this film is that it set up some things and it did further who Peter Parker is as a character, because now he was dealing with a sense of, you know, I did some bad shit, like during that state of the symbiote and all that stuff. So it would have been very interesting to see the follow-up and see him deal with those things, and kind of grow past that. And I know that the movie was in place, but I think that's the biggest regret of this movie. Like, looking back now as an adult, I watch it and I'm like, I hate that was the last one that we got with Tobey.
It's not anymore. Well, maybe.
It seems like you know something we don't know, Manny, but
I know what's only obvious.
But yeah, so I think that's the thing that I hate about this movie the most. Looking back at it, I was like, man, it left us at a point where it's like it didn't feel like it closed what we needed, like we got the closure that we needed. So that's kind of like my last thought on it. But
and it may change when you watch it again, maybe, huh? Especially after No Way Home, we'll see. This movie is maybe the most memed movie of the Tobey Maguire Spider-Verse when it comes to just even the of course the punk rock emo Spidey scene, but also
Bully Mcguire.
His aunt exploding just all of a sudden while praying. There's a lot in this movie that is very pop, and I think incredibly
popular.
Very, very out there, and maybe just mismatched. But in piecemeal, I think you're right. If we took just Sandman's story and focused on that, that actually works. Eddie Brock might be okay too. The Venom stuff might work. And obviously the Harry stuff is the most grand betrayal, amnesia, remembering, going after the people you care about that can happen. But it all just happens at once and very, very quickly. I mean, there's so much introduction of new characters still. Gwen Stacy's in this movie. There's a really big turn with J.K. Simmons and all that stuff. But this is I think also fit into that time period where there were a lot of sequels and new big IP stuff happening in the industry. I think there's a Pirates movie. There's a National Treasure movie coming out the week after, like follow-ups and sequels, and then a brand new Transformers movie coming out. So when the first Spider-Man and even the second Spider-Man movie released, they kind of got to take up that space of the conversation. And when Spider-Man 3 releases, in order for it to hold everyone's attention, it really had to be like a home run. And because it wasn't, I feel like that's maybe why it's forgotten a lot. Because obviously Michael Bay's Transformers released, and that was the best film of that year. The year that There Will Be Blood and No Country for Old Men came out, Transformers kind of redefined
amongst the rest.
Cinema.
And it sold so many more toys than those two movies combined.
Oh, yeah. But Brent, you do have toys from There Will Be Blood and No Country for Old Men. You have that air compressor thing.
I do have Paul Dano's dead body in the bowling alley. It comes with the bowling alley.
Spoiler alert.
And then with the kind of blood-soaked pin It's my son loves it. My son plays with it all the time.
And for There Will Be Blood, the number one high selling toy that year was oil.
Wow.
Incredible joke.
Yeah.
Everybody was buying it that year. So I think you're wrong.
Baby.
Yeah. All right. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to play a really fast, quick game. I'm calling it the Toby Game. And if you've listened, well, this is the first time you've heard it, but we've recorded these episodes out of order. So Lex kind of has a little bit of a heads up about what this game is. Just pay attention to the title. It's the Toby Game. The Toby Game.
I know. Yeah.
And Lex, so you've never done this, but you'll see a chat box to the right. Do you see it? I'm going to type something in there now because we are doing this remotely. This is where you will put your answers, and I'm going to keep track of them. And the winner will win. We talked about La La Land earlier. There's a lot of jazz in this movie too, in that jazz bar. Badass.
Oh yeah.
Do emo kids like jazz?
Yes.
Is that a thing?
Confirmed.
Okay. Confirmed. Okay. Good. Now we know.
Chemical Romance was initially a jazz band.
A jazz band.
That's a jazz band.
They did the La La Land score first, I think. And
I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask some questions about Toby, and you will respond in the chat, and you'll get a point for everyone you get correct. Sweet. And then again at home you can play, but you won't have access to us. Here's the first question in our Toby game.
Gross.
Tobey Maguire has been a vegetarian since what year? Tobey Maguire is vegan now, but he's been a vegetarian starting at what year?
Wow. Do we hit enter now? Oh, okay.
Yes, yeah, go ahead. Yeah. You can guess, and it's literally just whoever gets closest or gets it right on the dot. And Lex, before the pod, we actually talked about this. Not about
Toby, but just vegan stuff, right?
Yeah. Lex is a vegan for one meal today.
For
one meal. Yeah. There's a specific choice. There was an expiration date with my conversion.
Yeah. So we're doing Price is Right rules, so closest without going over, and you both went over, so no one gets the point. He's been a vegetarian since 1992.
Ooh.
But in Spider-Man 3, Peter Parker orders a steak, and that just doesn't make sense.
CGI, my friend.
No, just kidding. Actually,
so he must have been like
12 That's crazy. 13? For that long, like still to this day, he's vegetarian.
Still to this day, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
Yep. Here's another one. Ironically, compared to Spider-Man's abilities, Mcguire has a fear of this. So ironically, compared to Spider-Man's abilities, Mcguire has a fear of this. So Brent, you wrote in spiders. Lex, you wrote in heights. Lex, you get the point. He's afraid of heights. But Brent, did you know that Lex is afraid of spiders?
Okay, I brought this up in an episode, and it's not a phobia or anything. As a kid, everyone's afraid of spiders. I don't know who.
Not me.
I don't know which freak.
I kind of
just
am.
Kidding. No.
I don't like spiders. I step on them. Sorry.
I mean,
Cancel
even
me.
then, I'd be kind of I was usually barefoot around the house, so that's probably why I didn't have. I couldn't. I
grab a shoe.
Now I do, but you know what?
I'll bop 'em.
Even now as an adult, like I grab a shoe and I'm like, if I'm a second too late, like they're gonna jump at me, like they know this is coming. So
I do feel that too.
But it's not a fear. Like Manny keeps bringing it up as it is a phobia. It's like, how did you watch the movie like without stopping?
I don't know. I think you're scared. And I will say, though, that Brent really hates spiders. He, at the end of the film Charlotte's Web, was clapping. It was insane. I've never seen anything like it.
That bitch.
Yeah. All right. Here's the next question. Apart from his 3 Spider-Man films, what is the highest grossing movie that Tobey Maguire is in? Apart from Spider-Man 1, Spider-Man 2, and Spider-Man 3, what is the highest grossing movie? It made $527 million worldwide.
Nope, I'm wrong.
Apart from his 3 Spider-Man films, what is his highest grossing movie? Tobey Maguire.
This is all you, dude. I fucked up.
I can't think of the name, but I'll just put in what the movie's about.
I guess that will count. Brent, guess Seabiscuit, the horse movie, right?
Horse film.
Lex said it's the one where he is a priest. I don't even know what that is.
The Count? No, wait, no, that's not the Monte Cristo.
No, that's another actor, I think.
No.
Count of Monte Cristo?
No, it's not that one. But Tobey Maguire.
You're talking about Philip Seymour Hoffman in Doubt?
No, he plays a priest.
Okay. Well, no, you're wrong. If we don't know the title, it probably didn't gross $530 million.
You're probably right, but
the movie is Boss Baby.
He's in that movie?
Maguire is in Boss Baby, yeah.
Wait, is he the dad?
Yeah, he's the dad. He's
Jesus
the dad in
Christ.
Boss Baby. Come on.
What?
Come on. Yeah, I had no idea it made that much money either.
I had
no idea that he was.
Wish I hadn't.
We watched it in theaters, and we watched that movie on Storks, both animated movies about babies. It's wild.
Oh, the movie's called Satan's Alley, by the way. It's with Robert Downey
That sounds
Jr.
familiar.
Wow.
Wow.
It's very similar to Boss Baby, I think. Satan's Alley.
Yeah.
Same story, right?
Close, yeah. Same director.
Same character art. There's another childhood actor and personal friend that has acted with Mcguire a total of 3 times in 3 movies. Who is this childhood actor who is also a friend of his?
That has been in 3 movies?
He's acted 3 times with Tobey Maguire.
Oh, I'm
They're
stupid.
buddies.
I'm stupid. God,
he's a big actor. Brent, I think you know who it is now.
Hold on.
I almost guessed it, but I was like, it can't be that obvious a one because I don't think they've been in that many things together.
Yeah.
Yes, I think they have.
Lex, you guessed Jake Gyllenhaal. Brent, you guessed Lucas Haas. The answer is Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah.
He's been in multiple films.
Oh.
It's the
Great Gatsby.
Yeah.
It's the Pussy Posse.
What? What did you say?
Do you guys not know? Look it up after this.
Wait.
I will Google the first part of that.
I'm scared.
Oh, boy.
Here we go. Following the financial success of Spider-Man, for what film did Maguire command a $12 million paycheck? So it's not a Spider-Man movie. He asked for, and he got $12 million to act in this movie.
Boss Baby.
I'm just going to start guessing this for every single one.
The one where he's a priest.
Lex, and you had a heads up because you've done. We did this already. We recorded Andrew Garfield's 3 days ago. You should have been studying.
I know, like Tobey's life.
Tobey Maguire's life. I literally Googled the same thing you would have seen. It's not like I have a secret in at IMDb.
Ooh, Brothers is a good guess. I forgot about that movie.
Brent guessed Seabiscuit. Lex guessed Brothers.
I don't even think the budget was that much.
Brent, you got it correct. Seabiscuit, baby.
Ooh.
He got paid more than all the horses, I guess, because a lot of them died during the filming. Okay, Paul Lieberstein plays a former HR rep named Tobey in this often rewatched sitcom.
Paul who?
Lieberstein.
Plays a what? Wait, can you just repeat the whole thing?
Paul Lieberstein plays a famous HR rep named Tobey in this often rewatched sitcom.
Oh, I didn't even see Brent's guess. Like,
it's The Office. You both get it right. There's a turn in this game, Brent. We reached it. Do you get the turn now?
I kind of you hit Tobey very hard when you told me that, and I was like, I think I know where this is going.
Good. Now everyone's on the same page. Again, Lex, why did you not Google everything about Tobey Maguire before?
Because I would have needed to Google everything about just Tobey's in general.
Yeah. In what Paranormal Activity film do we finally see the face of the evil entity Tobey?
Oh,
Tobey is the name of the demon in the Paranormal Activity films. But in which movie? He's invisible in most of the movies, but in what film do we actually see the face of Tobey?
Can I put the number instead of like the name of the movie?
I just did.
Does that work? Well, it's because at the time it was still called Paranormal Activity 3. But then they started doing the blah blah blah.
Yeah, you can put a number. You can put a number, and I'll tell you if you got it right. Now that I have it pulled up.
Okay, no, you know what? Actually, now I don't know the number, but I remember the name.
I
love I've actually seen all the Paranormal Activities. Brent, have you seen them all?
I've seen the first 3. The first 3 are all good. I think the third might be the best that I've seen. So I gotta watch.
I really like the first. Interestingly enough, just quick thing, because I haven't seen the new Paramount Plus one yet.
Next of Kin.
The reboot, Next of Kin. But I think the most I went was 4. I might have seen the Ghost Dimension a little bit, but that movie was so bad. Like it was meant for it to highlight like 3D shit, and it was just bad. But
that was a 3D movie?
Yeah.
Oh my god!
But I recently saw like I don't know if it was Watch Mojo or so, if it wasn't Watch Mojo, it was like one of those YouTube channels like that where they did like a timeline of all of the Paranormal Activity movies. And so despite the fact that I hadn't seen all the movies, I watched that.
You get it.
And it talked through that. But it kind of made me want to watch all of them again. So I don't know.
Look, I've seen them all. I just watched Next of Kin, I guess, during Thanksgiving of
Was it good?
This year. It's pretty good. I like it. I will say, though, I watched it and I was like, man, this is beautiful. Like, the shots were beautiful. Yeah. But then I realized cameras have gotten
better. I mean,
beyond.
Well, and this one's not a found footage, right? It's more of like a documentary.
It's a sound footage. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, they're shooting a documentary.
It's like higher production value than like your mom and pop shop.
They're running around with red cameras and stuff. It's fun.
I think beautiful. I actually stopped watching that YouTube video when it came to Next of Kin in case I didn't want to get spoiled, so...
You got to watch Next of Kin. Well, you're both wrong because Brent, you guessed 3. Lex, you guessed the Mark ones, which is Paranormal Activity 5. You see his face first in 2015 in Paranormal Activity: The Ghost Dimension.
Was it that one? Oh, okay.
Obvious. And Google it. He looks scary. All right, here we go. There's only 3 more questions. Over? You went over. You went under. You didn't go far enough.
But if I get close, don't I win?
Well, that wasn't a number one.
Wow.
I'll tell you when it's a number.
Oh, yeah, true.
All right, this famous YouTuber, Toby, boasts over 13 million subscribers across 3 channels. He's one of the original YouTubers. What is his name? Go back into your mind to the days when YouTube was a big deal. This famous YouTuber, first name Toby, boasts over 13 million subscribers across his 3 channels, which is a lot of subscribers. Do y'all YouTube or no?
Yeah.
I don't.
I do.
Okay.
So
Lex,
I do. Asking for his name?
What's his name? He literally, I think, is number 2 behind Philip DeFranco. Who's that? I don't know who that is. Or number 3 or something.
This is wrong. I don't fucking know.
Brent, guess people.
I'm just looking up Toby's face now.
Is he okay? This may be cheating, but like, can I ask? Is he still active? Like,
he's still active. He also plays video games. Oh, Lex, I don't think you know it.
Yeah, look, Toby. No, hold on, let me guess.
Yeah, Toby's very scary. If this is, I mean, it's kind of almost a boring scary.
Yeah,
because it kind of just looks like a scary ghost skeleton man.
Like, night vision face. Ghost.
Yeah.
This one's just
Brent guess you put PewDiePie.
Wow, Delphin, you are.
Oh, sorry.
You are an old man.
I am.
You are just an old little gentleman, aren't you?
No, never mind. Hold on. No, hold on.
Lex is out. It's Toby Turner.
No one knows who that is.
I don't know what the fuck that is.
I don't know either. Lex, you wrote in Fred?
Yeah, my first guess was funnier, Classic. And I was just going to be funny, but it was in poor taste, I think.
Here's the next one.
Orange guy. Oh, okay. I should have known.
Here's the next one. Oh. This Toby worked in all... Okay, this Toby, much like the characters in There Will Be Blood, worked in the oil fields prior to making it big by releasing songs like How Do You Like Me Now and Bear for My Horses. Brent, you get the point.
Yeah, I was like, I could guess what Brent said, but I'd be just at that point just following through.
That's Toby Keith, baby. Yeah, I think he also has Red Solo Cup, if I'm not mistaken. He's a good guy. Yeah. He's an oil.
I don't know if he's a good guy, is what I would say about Toby Keith.
I think he's a Trump
guy.
Rallies. Here we go. Final question. So, Brent, you have 3. Lex, you have 2. Final question. Sure. It's kind of a stretch. I ran out of favorite Tobys, okay? So bear in mind, bear with me. Which Shakespeare play features the most famous soliloquy, to be or not to be? Which Shakespeare play features the most famous soliloquy, to be or not to be? And Brent, you get the point because it is Hamlet. Brent, you've won the Toby quiz.
Yeah.
And that's technically a Toby. Sorry, everyone. Well,
that's not it. You see, you get mad for me not doing research. There's no way I could have prepared for that. I was going to put Macbeth, but I was like, no, I think Brent got it right. And yeah.
Well, so we are coming to the end of this pod, but before we go, let's talk about our final thoughts on the Tobey Maguire, Sam Raimi films, and then possibly what you expect or what you want to see from him. I mean, obviously these cameos shouldn't be too long, but what you're hoping from their turns in the new No Way Home film. Lex, when you look back at your time as a small child, underage, maybe shouldn't have been watching Blade, but what will you think about Toby? Keith? No, what will you think about Tobey Maguire and his turn as Spider-Man?
Yeah, no, I think he still embodies those movies embody what Spider-Man is as a character, and it's just epic at many levels. The score is still timeless in my opinion. Like you hear it, even just a bit of it, and it calls back to the epicness, the heroism behind the movie. Yeah, the shots, the visual effects, everything still holds well. So it's hard to let it go as your go-to Spider-Man movie, as your favorite. And I think once again, that is not only due to what Tobey accomplished, but the director, the production, the cast, like the characters around Tobey. So yeah, it's great. It's still my favorite Spider-Man, I believe. Part of it may be nostalgia, but I think once again, a lot of the things that we've mentioned today is how things are still relevant today to what a superhero is. I lastly think that the two movies are so good that the third one does not outdo what the first two did, right? And then the third one's still further to an extent. Whether we have our gripes about X and Y decision, it furthered the characters. My only gripe about the franchise as a whole is where it left those characters, and that was the last time you saw them. I would hope that No Way Home perhaps provides a little bit of that closure, give us a little bit of insight of where he's at now, if he happens to be, an older version, perhaps just a little bit of insight on how he's doing and how much he's grown. I think it would be really nice. And I would hope that his character is paid tribute via all of those other elements that made the movie memorable. So perhaps having the score there, having some line, great power has great responsibility. I think those are the things that I would look forward to seeing in No Way Home.
Nice. Yeah, Brent, so if you are looking back at your time, it sounds like you worked in a theater, right? During this time? This is like peak blockbuster time.
Man. I spent quite a few of my like teenage, kind of like ending high school, starting college years, like in and around working at a theater. So it was a big deal. Yeah.
Peak. But what do you think about Sam Raimi's and Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, and what are you looking forward to in No Way Home? Will Tobey Maguire look hot still?
Oh, you bet. All that gambling money, it's got to be paying for those surgeries. Yeah, we've all seen Molly's Game. We know.
Yes. I was going to say Gerald's Game, but that's a different movie.
That is a different, still good movie though.
Better movie.
Better movie, I think. I mean, I just love, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, and I think what kind of gets lost in the conversation of who is your favorite Spider-Man that a lot of people maybe don't think about is, I think the reason why a lot of people's favorite Spider-Man is Tobey Maguire is, sure, there's some of that nostalgia there, but I think a lot of it is Sam Raimi. And a lot of it is like, it really comes down to, because if you really break down the nitty gritty of like Tobey Maguire's acting, his performance choices, all that stuff in the Spider-Man movies, I don't honestly know if you'd be blown away by that much of it. Maybe that's a hot take. I don't know. But wow. I just think that Sam Raimi's choices as a director and the execution of the scenes and the character choices and their dynamics and how much time they devote to character and how everything is kind of character driven. That is why I think Tobey Maguire is still a lot of people's favorite Spider-Man because he was just so well executed. Like the first two movies and a good amount of stuff in the third movie. And also there's that nostalgia factor. I mean, as far as No Way Home, I just don't even know. I don't know, man, because it's like I'm fully preparing myself for a like 3 to 5 minute end of movie pop in, because I honestly also think that is why they're downplaying it so much, is because they're like, well, how do we even balance expectations at this point when we know it's going to be a small thing? Because that's kind of what I'm expecting. If not, if it is kind of a more substantial thing where they factor into the movie more, I'll be really excited. Like just the fact of, we've been talking about like Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, but like if we do see a like older, mature, more, Peter Parker that is from his universe, I hope that we do get a little bit more of that history that we never ended up seeing. Like that would be so exciting if he mentioned something about like the Vulture in his universe, because that was going to be, I think 3, or that was going to be the 4th. Yeah, it was going to be John Malkovich in 4, I think, being the Vulture, right? I think is what I read. So it's just stuff like that I, fingers crossed it's something like that, but I also don't know how much they want to turn an MCU movie into this big thing. But I mean, I think that they're totally down to do that at this point.
Yeah.
So
I mean, the MCU is really good at that new kind of meta understanding about their place in pop culture. They reference nonchalantly the Avengers or specific things that they know are like cultural moments in people's, watching of stuff. So even the fact that these actors are in the MCU now in No Way Home, maybe wink, wink, is such already a big recognition and meta-ness of like, hey, thank you for loving Spider-Man for the last 2 decades or so. But yeah, all of Tobey Maguire's films are definitely part of the Sam Raimi vision for Spider-Man. You can tell this is someone who's watched and the all the animated stuff, but has read Spider-Man throughout his life, drawing reference from the comic books and everything else that was Spider-Man before. I think this all of these feel so connected because they have such a strong, unique visual style. I mean, we didn't even talk about Bill Pope, but Bill Pope did a lot of these movies, and they're beautiful, beautiful movies, and they're sweeping through the buildings of New York. That's not something every other character can do. There's like really big swings. He's dealing with, Spider-Man's so unique because he's trying to live a normal life alongside his kind of vigilanteism, and all of these movies address that in a way that really no other characters can. At least, now I think it's happening with all of the MCU shows, but up until then, like everyone was a billionaire or a millionaire or didn't have to worry about any of that stuff. But here he is, like dealing with it, and I think such a special group of movies, these 3, and all or most of the Spider-Man movies do draw some kind of inspiration from the Tobey Maguire, Sam Raimi's. But we've come to the end of this pod. Let us know what you thought about Tobey Maguire. Again, I feel like most people do generally like him, even though he does dance on a piano and, use bells to kill Foreman. But we've come to the end of this pod. Brent, you're the guest. What do you have to plug?
Okay. So go listen to, Manny made a joke about it, but Transformers is our most recent episode that we did with him on it on Director Showdown. It was a really fun episode. And in the macro, we are still talking Michael Bay, Zack Snyder, their movies. We have a couple more each, that we are going to be talking. So just go listen to that, go subscribe, and go listen to my buddy Eric's podcast, Cover Stories. It's very good. So yeah.
A lot of pods. Lex, what do you have to plug? Please do all of the in-channel stuff before you start schlepping your other stuff.
No, well, of course, recently I released an episode with Manny as well related to Spider-Man. And this is on my podcast with my co-host Josh called Not in Theaters. And Not in Theaters recently just came back with some fresh episodes. We're continuously recording after a pretty long hiatus. But we basically talk about, even before the pandemic happened, we were talking about things that are not in theaters. So how would we approach a movie differently? Fan casting, all that stuff, kind of like dream scenarios. Most recently, we talked about with the recent announcement of another Spider-Man trilogy, perhaps. We talked about with the Tom Holland character, what we would like to do in a new trilogy, what stories we would go, which villains, etc. So if you like to think of the what ifs, I think this is a good scenario or a good platform for you to listen to. And we have a catalog of 20 plus episodes full of these weird and ridiculous scenarios.
Nice.
But yeah, please check us out. And
you don't want to plug your other pod?
No. Well, we can also. This one is more. It's similarly a video podcast. I know it's also available on Apple Podcasts. I don't know if it's available in on Spotify. However,
or on vinyl, like our podcasts. We're available on vinyl for
always
all of you.
Always dropping on vinyl.
Always dropping on vinyl.
Alamo City Movie Talk. It's a podcast that I guest in a lot, especially on their video. It's more movie review oriented. But me and my friend Ryan, we tackle a lot of movies that we want to go deeper on. We do trailer reactions every now and then as well, especially with big blockbuster movies such as No Way Home. But yeah, check us out. Some great content there as well. Just once again, I'm a little iffy on the platforms available. However, if you look them up on Facebook, a lot of the videos get posted there as well.
Nice. Definitely go to patreon.com/DelphinPod for exclusive content. You can see us. We've got the video pod of this episode. I just realized I was drinking red wine straight from the bottle.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, is that real?
Hell yeah, dude. King
is that
shit.
Water?
Well, I was thinking it's Spider-Man. We got to turn the house red. I got to drink red wine. And now I'm thinking I have to edit all these pods tonight. But it's fine. Watch all of that, and we'll see how it looks online. But all kinds of fun stuff. The Countdown Strikes Back, our Star Wars podcast, Revenge of the Sequel, is out. Dirt Sheet Radio. There's so much happening, and I'm really excited, especially for all of the shows, and everybody loves it. We'll have sequels for days, and we'll see I guess you'll hear us tomorrow for our Andrew Garfield episode, and the day after that for the Tom Holland, and then, of course, No Way Home.
Be careful with spoilers.
It is. We hope it's everything that you wanted. Please.
Topher Grace is in it.
Thanks, Brent, for being on.
Oh, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Brent. This was awesome.
A blast, yeah.